Class, this lecture is going to be discussing what a critical book review is and how you can go about writing one. And so you'll notice in your assignments in this quarter, you will have to do a critical book review. Don't get too afraid of this. First off, before we get into what it is, I want to make sure you know what a critical book review is not. A critical book review is not a summary of the book. You can assume by and large that whoever's reading your critical review is familiar somewhat with the work. Basically, what you may have done in high school, which would have been a book report, those are meant to tell people what the book is about. It's kind of like giving people a Cliff's Notes version of the story. If I were going to ask you to summarize a book, that would be different. But this is a critical book review. And so you can see on your screen here, I pulled up a critical review that I did for Southeastern in my doctoral program. I was reviewing Spiritual Leadership, a Biblical Theology of the Role of the Spirit in the Leadership of God's People by David Huffstutler and Kostenberger. Anyway, what you can see is that this is going to look a little different. And so I just want to walk you through the different elements of a critical book review and encourage you as you're thinking through this. These are not difficult, but you have to be focused. You have to be making sure that as you're reading a book, you're asking the right questions because you want to answer the questions that are necessary for this type of review. First off, just look at the formatting here. You'll notice that there is a title page. In your academic writing, both in Turabian style, what I have in front of you is an SBL style, so it's a slight Turabian. It's just a little bit more advanced, but very similar. What you see here is there is a title page. You'll do this. If you go beyond Fruitland and perhaps even at your time in Fruitland, you'll do a title page that's intended to be on every one of the documents that you turn in. So you can see here that I have a title page right here. And of course, I've got the school name, what I'm doing, and of course, what class this is for, and then your name at the bottom. This keeps everything in order. Then you go over, and you'll see in the on the paper itself, you always start off with the bibliographical information, and so you see that there at the top. And what this is basically how this book will be listed out in a bibliography that you would attach to the end of a work. So if you were putting this in a page, this is what this would look like. You see the hanging indent there, the formatting, the italicized title, those kind of things. So you see that it's formatted exactly like it would be on the bibliography. This is what I'm expecting when you do your book review. You start out with the bibliographical information there, just as it would be on your bibliography. Then from there, you go into the paper, and the paper is intended to answer a number of questions. First off, who is writing? You can see there that I gave a little bit of a background of who David Huffstutler is. Why in the world should we listen to this guy? That's basically the question you're answering there. Why does this person deserve to be heard in the topic that they have written on? And so what you want to do is you want to list things that are appropriate. So maybe education, maybe work experience, research experience that they may have had. And so you just want to kind of let people know, let your readers know that this is what qualifies this person as a scholar in this area. It's also going to lend you to any biases that you may point out later on in the paper. So just be aware of that. And then from there, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you can identify the thesis of said work. I've highlighted here basically what I've identified as the thesis of Huffstutler's book. Now, I doubt that many of you have read this book. I'll be honest, it was a book that was very arduous in its reading. But essentially, you see that I've highlighted here, Huffstutler argues in his thesis that there is a distinction of the work of the Holy Spirit in those who are biblical leaders beyond the other works such as prophecy, indwelling, or regeneration. And basically, what he's trying to argue in this work is that there is a distinction that you can identify in terms of the work of the Holy Spirit within a leader versus just any person who has the Holy Spirit as a Christian. So he's trying to prove that, and you can kind of see as you look down here. Once you state the thesis and the purpose of the writing, then you're setting off on a course to see how he proved or how he supported his thesis. Uh, what you're doing is you're looking for his argument. You're looking to be able to identify how that author has laid out his argument in this book. And so you see here, I've made a couple notes here. He's linked positive leadership actions with the enablement of the Holy Spirit, and it kind of goes on. And so you can see I kind of gave it just some different ideas about the outline of how he chose to support his thesis. And then, of course, what you're doing is you're looking to critique it. You're looking to be able to say, does he do a good job? Does he actually prove his thesis? And or is it has a flaw? And so basically, what I have written here is that I don't disagree with his thesis, um, but at the same time, I did have some challenges with or trouble with the way he chose to support it. And so I've laid out some of those things in this paper, and that's what I want you to do. I want you to say, hey, listen, this person did a good job here, but maybe there's some gaps, and you want to be able to point out those gaps. Maybe it was overlooking certain challenges. Maybe you've noticed that there's a conversation that was not acknowledged. Maybe you've noticed that the argument had some fallacies in it. Maybe they had some assumptions or presumptions in their argument that are unfounded. And so what you want to do in a critical review is be able to bring those to light. The point is not to bash the author, nor is it to sing his praises, but it's to stand back and say, hey, this author has written about this topic, and he supports it this way, and is it legitimate? Is it good? Right. So the paper will go on, and additionally, you'll ask questions as if, who is this writing good for? What is the if you have their thesis, you have their purpose, here's their argument. Did they prove their argument? Was it well proved? And who is this for? And so, here you'll notice, perhaps you can see this in this paper. Basically, I pointed out that Huffstetler, while he was making this assumption about the spiritual gifting of leaders, he pretty much did not talk about how that impacted church leadership. I felt like he really left a lot of that out there to be discussed, and perhaps that was not his purpose, but he didn't identify those parameters when he began. And so really what you're looking for is an overall review that states the strengths of the paper, the weaknesses of the paper, and then overall, what would you, or paper, I say paper, or book, what would you say the recommendation would be for which group? This right here was written for people, perhaps mostly scholars, perhaps mostly church leaders. What's your response to that? So there is a first person portion of this. It's not like a research paper where you're completely in third person. You're going to say, well, do I agree with this? Is this something that you can see as supported, or is this something that you see as biased, or you perhaps see some gaps there? You may have to go to other sources. You'll see here I've got in the bibliography only one item, and it's not the book. It's how I learned a little bit about the author himself. So you have to go and do some digging so that you can actually tell a little bit about that. But the critical review is, like I said, it's not intended to give a summary of the book. You don't have to give an outline of the book. You just really have to say, hey, here's the thesis, and here's how this argument was made, how the thesis was supported, or again, perhaps pointing out gaps in said thesis. So now when you're thinking about your own project, when you're thinking about your own writing, let's take a few minutes and just talk about that. I'm not going to assign you a book. You're reading enough books already. So I want you to do is pick a book that you read either last quarter or you're reading this quarter that you will do a critical review on. And what you want to do is you want to identify, you want to ask those questions. What is the thesis? What is this author trying to prove? What are the presumptions that he brings in with him? What are the parameters of that? What's the purpose of this writing? And then kind of go about how does this author choose to craft his argument, and how does that fit within this book? So what you want to do is take your own book there, use a highlighter or a pencil, whatever you need to, and mark it out. What's the thesis? What are we talking about here? So read up. You'll see in your quality research papers book, also in your Turabian book, they'll talk about thesis. Read up on that. Make sure you understand what the idea of a thesis is. That way you can identify it. But basically, you're looking to say, here's the premise upon which this book is built. And then, of course, the hope is, as you identify in this critical review, you're also going to be better equipped to identify your own thesis going forward. You should already have a thesis statement figured out for your research paper, but this is going to help you kind of think through crafting your own argument, how you're going to write that research paper. I hope you'll find it helpful. I believe you will as you begin to do these. And just kind of a word, if you're going to go forward in your academic studies, especially going on to finish your bachelor's or your master's degree, you will be doing a number of critical reviews. That's kind of the thing. So I just want to encourage you, if you don't feel like this is clicking with you, just hang in. It will eventually. All right. I hope that you enjoy this study, and we'll talk soon.